All right, we're still in the book of Nehemiah, so turn your Bibles to chapter 4. We're going to be looking at verses 7 through 15 this morning. You know, I'm becoming actually more so than I was, a college football fan. And college football started this Thursday. It actually started, but I shouldn't have went yesterday to the UCLA game, but I did anyway, half sick, and I wasn't going to pass that up. And you know, it's just amazing the excitement and the thrill of the first game, and we played a team that wasn't so good. You know, it was interesting because we Don and I were walking to the game, and we came to the street corner, and these Virginia fans were playing. There were 4 or 5 of them right next to us, and we looked over, and across the street were these couple wearing USC jerseys. What are they doing here? Are they lost? I know they haven't won in a while, but you know, what's going on here? And so the Virginia fan says, he made a comment about it, so I made I'm not going to say what I said, but I made a nice comment over there to the guy about USC. He goes, well, you're not even concerned about us. That's kind of funny. You're more concerned about them. I go, oh, no. I just don't want to discourage you because, you know, we can be discouraged enough when we start to play you this morning. And so it was fun yesterday. But, you know, college football, you know, especially the first game of the season, the good teams always play the not-so-good teams. You know, and I could see, you know, these Virginia guys were probably pumped up. You know, they were probably like, you know, we can do this going into the Rose Bowl. Imagine playing in the Rose Bowl. You know, I mean, wow, what all the games were played there. And I could see them all pumped up, all the practice they went through. The coach got them all pumped up, and they were going. And even they played a pretty decent first half. You know, I mean, we weren't very far ahead of them. They were in the game. They were within a touchdown and a point, I think, during the first half. And I could see them going into halftime, you know, kind of pumped up, but then as halftime comes along and they sit there with their coach, they start to realize something. Man, those guys are good. Man, that guy hit me hard. Man, that quarterback is something else. Man, that guy runs fast. Man, it's hot out there. And they start feeling the aches and the pains, and pretty soon they begin to become discouraged at halftime because of what was going on. You know, here they come in pumped, then all of a sudden they become discouraged. And I wonder, you know, why that happens? Why can't they come out? Because the second half, we took the game over and we won by a lot of points. But what happens at halftime? Why do they get discouraged at halftime? And I think a lot of it is you begin to look around and start this muscle on top of our shoulders begins to look at all the things that are impossible for us to get done, and how big the situation is, and how far where you need to be is, and pretty soon you start to be discouraged. And so this morning I want to share because Nehemiah and the people working on the wall had some typical kind of discouragement. And it's around the same time, it's around halftime. And I know sometimes when my team's playing and they're hot, they're going, I don't want halftime. Just keep playing, because you're doing good. I don't want to go in the locker room. We need to start thinking about it. And I want to share with you this morning, because what I get out of this passage is discouragement doesn't come from the outside. Discouragement comes from the inside. And you don't have to live discouraged. You can live encouraged. And Nehemiah is going to show that this morning and show us why that's so important, and why you don't have to live discouraged, that you can be encouraged about wherever you're at. So Lord, I guess I want to say thank you, Lord, for your word.
Amen.
Thank you for your presence here. Thank you for your insights, Lord. And God, may our minds and hearts be open, Lord, and may we realize, Lord, that this discouragement we walk around with is a choice. Are we going to look at the obstacles that are outside ourselves, Lord, that they're bigger, they may seem bigger than what we can think, what they are? Or are we going to look on the inside and realize that we serve a mighty God, one that's greater than anything that comes our way, that cares for us more than we can think or imagine. And may when we leave today, may we be encouraged and not discouraged about where we're at. So as always, we give you all praise and all honor. Amen.
Amen.
You know, I thought several different ways of how I was going to do this message. And, you know, it's how we handle that halfway point. It's how we handle once we get into those things in our life. You know, it might be something a project you're working on. It might be a place you're at in your life. It might be a certain situation in your life. But we all get to that point. And I'm not sure where it is, but we get that point where we kind of stop and then we kind of look around and see where we're at. And if you look at this passage, look at verse 6. If you look down at verse 6, chapter 4, verse 6 is, you know, where does it say the Israelites were in building the wall? They were halfway. I mean, they were halfway in getting that wall done. They were closing up all the holes and they're replacing all the gaps. And up to this point, they were focused in on what they were doing. They weren't getting, remember last week they were getting taunted by all the words from the other people, but what did Nehemiah say? They prayed right away and they kept working. And they got by that one. And I'm sure when they began to do the wall, I'm sure they were excited and motivated to get the work done. Then the excitement kind of goes away because you look at the wall, you look over at all the rubble, and you're wondering, is this ever going to get completed? And the Israelites were about 20 to 30 days of getting this wall done at this point. They're about halfway. So just imagine, for 20, 25 days, moving rubble day after day. Rock pile over to the wall. You're sweating, you're getting stiff, the muscles you haven't used in a while are starting to ache a little bit more. You're getting some stiffness, your hands are getting calloused, maybe even bleeding at times because of the hard work. Then all of a sudden you look around and you see that you're only halfway. In verse 10 it puts it well. It says, meanwhile the people of Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble. So they're seeing that. They're experiencing that same feeling that we can get when we try to accomplish something. When we're in the middle of, we're going through something, we get to this point, we look around and see where we're at. We're going, wow, we're not even close to where we thought we would be. And I remember, you know, the excitement around the church. And I see some excitement, but I don't see it like it used to be. I mean, when was the last time that we got together and canvassed our neighborhood to invite people to church? I can't remember. When's the last time that we got excited? I mean, I remember when we first started reaching out to the community, we were doing the water and the community day and these different things. Everybody was so excited about what our church is doing, and I could hear it everywhere. Oh yeah, I was talking to this person, and I told them about our church. Oh, I talked to that person, I was talking about our church. Where's all that gone? I think sometimes maybe we're in that halftime right now at our church. I mean, what happened? I think many of us maybe realize like, wow, you know, we're overmatched. You know, that's a big community out there. It's a lot of people we got to try to reach. I'm not sure we can do all that. That's a lot of work, a lot of streets around here to canvass. I'm not sure we can do that anymore. It's an awful hot summer, you know. And pretty soon you become discouraged about where, just for instance, the church is at. But the same thing happens in our own personal lives also. But where does this discouragement come from? I mean, we know that it's halftime, and we feel this discouragement. I think first it's been fed to us from the outside. Look back at verse 7 through 9 in this passage. It says, but when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that there were repairs to Jerusalem walls had gone ahead, and as the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. We prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet the threat. See, once again, Sanballat, Tobiah, these guys pop up their ugly heads. But this time they brought some friends with them. And they were plotting, they're plotting in front of these people that we're going to do this to you, we're going to come after you, we're going to do this. And it started to get into the minds of some of the Israelites who were working. And it's interesting, if you look at the people that were named here, I want to get to something here about who they are. See, Sanballat was from Samaria, which was north of Jerusalem. Tobiah was from Ammon, which was east of Jerusalem. Geshem was in charge of most of the Arab Peninsula, which is south of Jerusalem. And what did that leave? That small little sliver there of land in west of Jerusalem before you head off into the Mediterranean Sea. That land was controlled by what used to be called the Philistines. Now, 100 years later, after King David, they were called the Ashdodites. In other words, enemies were coming from all corners at them. Instead of their enemies going away, they actually increased from every corner. I think sometimes we feel that. We get discouraged because everywhere we look, there's something pops, something head pops itself up in our own life. I think if somebody tells you, that if you're in the will of God, and sometimes I can get really encouraged by this, but sometimes I think when we're in the will of God, we think everything's going to be great. The road's going to get smoother. But the road doesn't get any smoother. Especially if we're on a mission for God. But what does happen is your heart and your mind and your body can now handle it. Because see, God is more concerned about you than the circumstance that you're in right now. And so many times we get discouraged about where we're at. And we pray, our prayer is, change my circumstance. And I've been trying so hard not to pray that anymore, but to ask God to change me. Because when He changes me, the circumstance doesn't matter. I mean, He can do anything for us. It can be discouraging to us, even though we know this, it can still be discouraging for us. These enemies came in small groups and we're talking to the people who were doing God's work. And in verse 8 it says they were conspired together. And this wasn't some sort of full attack on them. Because they really couldn't do that. Because remember, Nehemiah had the letter from the king, just like you do, to do God's work. And they couldn't mount that whole attack on them. They couldn't do that. So instead of launching a whole attack, what they did is they took these little groups and went around the wall and just started kind of just talking about what they were going to do to these people. Kind of trying to scare them. Tell them they weren't going to be successful. So many times I think that the same thing's happening in the world today with the terrorists. Because that's what these guys were terrorists. They can't take over the whole thing, but they can scare a few of us. And pretty soon a few of us and a few of us, and pretty soon it's going to be all of us. But that's only the circumstance on the outside. We got to remember what's on the inside. And that's important. That discouragement doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the inside. In verse 10 clearly tells us this. Let's look at verse 10 through 12. It says, meanwhile, the people of Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out. So here they are going, hey, we're getting tired here. And there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. And our enemy said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put them into their work. The Jews who lived near them came and told us then came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. I love that 10 times over. Because when we begin to be discouraged, our situation might be at a level 1 or 2, But by the time we start thinking about it and making all these what ifs and all this stuff we start thinking about, that level 2 where you're at, the real problem, becomes a astronomical number because we put that in our head. And that's what they're saying here. 10 times over. So by the time they probably got to Nehemiah and told them, this problem seemed like huge to them. And how easily they could be discouraged by that. And it shows in verse 11 when he says, when they say, also our enemies said. In the middle of verse 12, they came and told us 10 times over. You know, there might be all kinds of factors going on in your life this morning that make you vulnerable to being discouraged. Though, you know, those factors alone can't do it. They can't do that to you. I think the thing sometimes that pushes us over the top is that we spend, first of all, spend too much time thinking about it, and we don't get enough rest. We don't. It's like this morning when we did our prayer time. When's the last time you spent a minute or two just listening to God? Because God's going to encourage you in those times. He knows what's going on in your life. He knows where you're at. He knows you're tired. He knows you're getting discouraged. I think sometimes we need rest. We need to stop. And all this negative stuff that was happening was starting to take all the energy out of the Israelites. All the factors were going on. It's interesting because, you know, negative words really will bring you down probably quicker than anything else. It's when you hear a lot of negativity around you. And it'll suck the life out of you if you allow it to. And that's what was happening to the Jews. It was taking all of their strength from them. See, how did this happen? The first way it happened was that they listened to all the negativity. See, you can walk away from it if you want. You don't have to be around it if you want. You can get away from it if you want. They put themselves in a position where they were going to hear the negative words, and they didn't care. Look what it says in verse 12. It came to pass that when the Jews which dwelt from them came, there was a group of people who lived next to their enemies. So when the enemies of the Lord spoke negative words to them, they listened to them. Get away from it. How many people do you know who are negative people and we still hang around them? You know, these are the people that they don't care how good things are going. You know? Wow, your church, man, I haven't been to New Heights Nazarene in a couple of years, but man, you guys are crowded now. But the parking lot, I couldn't get any parking out there. That's not too good. Or, wow, your youth group is really growing, but man, they're noisy. You know, why can't we just be positive about the positive and let the negative go away? I think sometimes if we could spread the gospel as well as we spread the negativity, how much the church would be growing today. Because it's so easy to be negative about things that are going on. You can notice how effectively the Jews spread the negativity in verse 11. First, they were persistent, and it said again and again and again, they took the negative words of the enemy and they multiplied them 10 times. Not only did they multiply the number, but they spoke the words and they multiplied the words themselves. In other words, they exaggerated the whole thing. And see how easily that can happen to us in our own life. We can exaggerate the whole situation we may be in. I think negativity is like that in our lives. When you allow it to happen, you're not doing what to the full capacity what God is asking you to do. We're not able to accomplish the mission that He has us on. We can't let that happen to us. Just like Nehemiah couldn't let it happen to the Jews there. Look at verse 13 through 15. He says, therefore, here's what he did. I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked them over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Here it comes. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome.
Great God.
And fight for the brothers, for your sons, and for your daughters, for your wives and your homes. When our enemies heard that, they were aware of the plot, and that God had frustrated them. We all returned to the wall, each to his own work. See, I think we need to understand something here. You know, these disturbances, these oppositions that come our way will always come to us from the outside. As long as we're doing the work of God calls us to do, we're going to face opposition. It's going to happen. Be ready for it. People always ask me, especially when Don and I had the youth, they would ask us, you know, how do you do it? Well, every Wednesday we had the youth, I expected trouble. I expected some kid to come through the church and yell, or some kid to steal something, some kid to spill something, 2 kids get in an argument. I always expected something. And so you know how to handle it. You know, it's going to happen. You're going to get opposition. But don't let it discourage you from where God's taking you. But see, the outside attack isn't where most discouragement comes from, where most defeats come from. Most defeats come from our inside. So how did Nehemiah conquer this discouragement of the Jews? Verse 14, he gathered the people together and spoke encouraging words to them. He didn't do any false hope. He didn't put any whipped cream or cherries on top. He didn't do any of that. He just did some good, godly, encouraging words. He says, don't be afraid. How easy, huh? Don't be afraid. He fed their heads and their minds with positive, spiritual, encouraging things that countered the negativity that was going on there. Because he told them, remember the Lord. Remember what he's done, what he's doing. Remember how great and how awesome and how wonderful he is. He's going, take your eyes off all the rubbish. Take your eyes off what's being destroyed, what's decaying. Take your eyes off the half-done wall. Take your eyes off the enemy. See, our strength isn't in our physical condition. Your abilities aren't going to finish the wall. Your abilities aren't going to get you through what you're going through this morning.
Right.
And you're in danger of being defeated by the enemy if you don't allow God to work through it. See, because God is in control this morning. And it's his strength that matters. It's his glory that's on display here. It is he whose will overcome the enemies. I always go back to that verse about where when God starts something, he's going to finish it. And we know in prior teachings that at the end, God wins. We might not know how we're going to win, but we're going to win. We might not know how many overtimes it might go, but we're going to win. And we've got to stick to it and be positive and pray and encourage each other. I think if we just spend more time supporting and lifting up our brothers and sisters, it would take away all the negativity. And that's what Nehemiah did. He said, fight for your brother or sister. Fight for your wife and your neighbor. I mean, if I'm fighting for one of you, am I going to be negative towards you? No, because I'm fighting for you. And that's why Nehemiah said that. So we need to fight for each other. So we won't be discouraged in where God has us going here. See, instead of tearing down one another with negative words, he told them to fight for one another. And fighting for it's a lot harder to be negative towards you, I'll tell you that. And so what happened here? Look down at verse 15. It says that God brought all the enemies' counsel to naught. In other words, all the enemies were discouraged. Enemies' discouraging words fell on deaf ears. Were the people still tired? Were they still only halfway through building the wall? Was there still a huge pile of rubble and rocks over here? Yep. But what was the difference here? They weren't discouraged is the difference. They were able to get back to work. Halftime wasn't over. They were able to get out there and play the third and fourth quarter. Because they finished that wall in around 50 days or so. So I hope this helps you this morning. If you're come across some discouragement in your life, that it doesn't come from the outside, but it comes from the inside. And maybe we need to check the company that we're around. If we're around a lot of negativity, get away from it. Get somewhere where you can be encouraged. And I hope that's your church and your church family. You can be encouraged by them. You find these people that are encouraging. And I know so many of you, and the things you've gone through, the things you're going through even at this moment, you wouldn't know it because you're not going to let the things on the outside bother you on the inside. I ask Bud almost daily, how you doing? I'm feeling great. I know he's not feeling great, but you know what? The things on the outside, he's not going to let bother him. There's some greater work here to be done. Maybe you need to quit fighting against everything and start to fight for your brother and sister this morning. Defend each other like a good brother or sister would defend the honor of each other. I tell you, when you begin to do that, just like God did with the Jews there, the discouragement is going to go away and turn into encouragement. Because our God is so strong and He's in control of whatever you're going through this morning. So don't leave here discouraged this morning. Leave here knowing that you have a God that cares for you. You have a God that's stronger than whatever you're going through, and one who loves you no matter what you did. And try this week to fight for a brother or sister that's hurting.
Amen.
You fight for somebody here. Pick somebody else, I'm going to fight for them. And it might be a phone call, it might be a text, it might be a visit, it might be, hey, can you go to lunch this week? But I'm going to fight for you. You'd be amazed how encouraged you're going to make that other person. But in the same way, when we go visiting and we're out there trying to fight for our brothers and sisters, to get them to surrender to Christ, we're always more blessed with them.
Amen.
So don't let the outside distraction get you down. Let God take care of that for you this morning. If you could grab your hymnal, it's number 463 in our hymnal. We want to sing this song before we go. It says, God be with you. So you can grab 463 in the hymnal as the praise team comes forward. And maybe this morning you want to come down to the altars this morning where we're singing this song. 463. If you want to come down this morning and just ask God to encourage your heart. Help you look at the good things.